Hello, hello, and welcome back. Right now, the newest season of My 2 Cents. Sorry about the delay, guys. I know it's been a while. I just posted the two last episodes from the first season, and now we are getting started with the second one. So, welcome back. Yeah. Hopefully, this background sound is not too loud, but I just thought to add something to the podcast, you know, and hopefully this is good, a good addition, and not just some random noise in the background. This is actually regarding something, a routine that I started since the beginning of the pandemic that I wanted to share with you guys. I actually just sent this message to a friend, and I was telling her that I got this routine. And usually, even during my classes, I have background sounds or background noise such as this. It's like a coffee shop ASMR. Now, personally, I never saw, what was good about ASMR. I never understood why people liked it so much. But I have to be honest, I do enjoy this ASMR. I do enjoy it. So yeah, here you guys go. Speaking of her, if you guys heard this notification, it was her talking about this background noise specifically. So there you go. It's kind of convenient that I'm talking about this at the moment, I guess. So anyway, here we are back again with yet another episode, and I want to try something different. I don't want to simply and randomly complain about things as I did in the previous season. I do like complaining and I like gossip, don't get me wrong, but this is not all there is about me. In fact, I was thinking about doing a podcast only talking about those things, but I'm actually a nerd and I really like books. I like reading, I like writing, and I just like that. I like to do those things a lot. And I have some official articles published and some others not so official. And I would like to, in each episode, talk about something that is dear to me. And hopefully, I'll be able to make some associations of that to my life and to the overall situation of the world, right? Like, for example, just to start off with a comment. I don't know if you guys ever read 1984 from George Orwell. George Orwell. Ugh, why is it so difficult to George Orwell? Orwell. George Orwell. Whatever. So, one of my favorite authors, even though I cannot pronounce his name properly. If you never read Animal Farm and if you never read 1984, you should. This is all I'm gonna tell you. You should. He is an amazing writer and he highlights some things back in the day that still present to this day. Like 1984 is a book talking about 35 years in the future of his current present. Because I believe the book was published in 1949 and he's talking about 1984. So he's talking about this futuristic society that people are being watched. He talks about the concept of Big Brother and how the government not only watches citizens and their routines and all that stuff, the government also controls information to a point where it manipulates its citizens, making them think and making them believe things that are not quite real, as if they were real, as if they were happening. So it's a pretty cool book, and even though it was written like 72 years ago, still very recent. You know, I mean, you can read this book that talks about 35 years after it's published, after it being published, and it talks about it's even common 72 years in the future because nowadays we are being watched for everything, but not necessarily for our own good. I'm not saying that's being watched could ever be good, but it could be used to the good of the people. Yeah, it could be used so that people will, how can I say, work better as a society. Of course, not having privacy is not good for the individual. It's never good for the individual. But maybe for the society, it's not so bad for the society as a whole. Because if you know what everybody is doing, and if you want that, of course, you can make cities safer, streets safer, neighborhoods safer, and so on. And you can maybe exactly, you know, cater society to the way that works for the people living in it. And of course, it can also be used for censorship and all this other bad stuff. That's why full surveillance is not ideal. And you can also manipulate people, which is the biggest concern. And don't kid yourselves, all right? We are all being manipulated. There is no escaping it. No escaping it whatsoever. And I personally like an idea posed by Denis Diderot a few years ago. You know, 140 years ago. No, 240 years ago. Yeah. So a while ago. If you guys don't know who Denis Diderot is, you should look him up. He's a French philosopher from the 18th century, and you just should read his stuff. His novels are a little perverted, but they're fun, and his philosophy is certainly interesting. And he lived alongside Jean-Jacques Rousseau, who used to believe that society corrupts the man, corrupts mankind, and if someone desires to not be corrupted, they should live outside of society. Whilst Diderot, Denis Diderot, he believed that even though society can corrupt mankind, can corrupt the man, um, you should live in it and be a hypocrite. As in, you know how it works, you know you're being manipulated, you know for the system your life is essentially worthless, um, but it doesn't matter because you should be functioning in society. And there's actually a TV show nowadays called Pretend It's a City, directed by Martin Scorsese, talking about From Lebowitz. And actually, it's not even talking about From Lebowitz. It showcases From Lebowitz opinions on New York. You know, pretends it's a city. She's talking about New York, and her wit is out of this world. Like certainly, if she had a podcast, it would be much more successful than this. She's very witted, she's very smart, and her opinions are quite amusing to listen to and to watch. So, I highly recommend Pretend It's a City. It's, more, let's say not more, it's easier to understand than Denis Diderot philosophy and goes directly together with what I'm saying here. And this is actually a recommendation from my students. So, thank you, students, which I'm not gonna say the name, but thank you. That was one of the best recommendations of the year. That's and a recommendation of another student that recommended a book to me, of which I forgot because I'm an idiot. Let me see if I wrote it down. Should have seen this before entering this. No, I didn't write it down. Great. I'll ask him later and I'll tell you guys which book it is. But I even separated it on Open Library and all that stuff. So anyway, good. Today's topic we are going to be talking about pop culture regarding an article that I wrote on Medium. So doesn't mean much or anything. About 13 months ago. It was on May 25th, 2020. So, and I remember learning about this in college as a philosophy major. I've learned in a very difficult book, tutored by a very, very intelligent and rigorous professor, some things about its author, Martin Heidegger. And if you guys are asking yourselves what book is this, the book is called The Question Concerning Technology. It's a book from 1954. And now, don't get me wrong, I've studied for a long time and read this book twice, which is not too much, by the way, but whatever. I'm not like a beginner, I'm not a noob to this topic, or book, or author to this matter, especially nowadays, but I still consider myself coming out short on this one, given that I only understood, only partially understood the stuff that I read in it. And to be honest, even after doing a few essays, writing a few essays, participating in a few seminars, and getting help from my professor, I'm still coming short on this one. The book, or at the very least, what I gathered from the book, isn't really relevant to this podcast today. Uh, Much less my former tutors and professors, right? So we are going to focus on the important part, which is the relationship between Heidegger and cinema, and more specifically, between Heidegger and Terrance Malick. If you guys don't know Terrance Malick, this is another recommendation that I give you guys, especially a few books that I'm going to talk about here, which is Badlands and The Tree of Life and The Thin Red Line. I said two books, but I just added The Tree of Life here. So The Tree of Life, The Thin Red Line, Badlands are must-watches. Tree of Life is recent, is like 10 years old only. Badlands a lot older, is with Charlie Sheen's father, and he just looks like Charlie Sheen back in the day. Badlands is a pretty cool movie. By the way, Charlie Sheen's father name is Martin Sheen, if you guys don't know. Pretty good actor actually, and you guys should watch it. All the actors there are just crazy old nowadays, but it doesn't matter, right? It doesn't matter. It's a pretty good movie, trust me. This movie is just amazing, and it's a must-watch, honestly. The only problem there is, and again, I'm copying a friend of mine who said this. This is not coming directly out of my mouth. But the only problem with Terrance Malick is that if you've seen one movie of his, you kind of seen it all. You know what I mean? His movies don't change that much. So, anyway, whatever. Terrance Malick. There are other better written scripts, than this one that I'm using right now about this topic. Again, there's a reason this podcast is called My 2 Cents. It's because it's not my expert opinion. It's just my opinion. Um, so for that reason, we are not going to dwell in philosophy for too long. Let me get a sip of my coffee here. It helps me think, you know, which is sad, but it's true. And also, briefly mentioning, there are several other books worth talking about regarding this topic, but for the sake of making this somewhat easy to follow and interesting podcast. I'll just name one more, which is Being and Time. Okay? Being and Time, also from Heidegger, goes without saying. It's a book from 1927, and it was one of the main ontology bases for Malik. All right, so if you guys are interested in dwelling more on this topic after this podcast, I highly recommend Being in Time and the Question Concerning Technology, watching Terrence Malick movies, and reading these two books from Martin Heidegger, at the very least. Right? But if you like this topic, you should read his work in general. Right? Trust me. Okay, but before we continue on Terrence Malick, I wanted to point out how powerful and subtle pop culture actually is. Right? You guys probably know that already without me having to say it. But pop culture has many, many times shaped some aspects of our culture. And that is not only regarding books, that, by the way, from Lebowitz wrote a pretty good one about 50 years ago called Metropolitan Life. And oh, that's a good read, people. The Metropolitan Life. Yeah, this book is pretty fun. Um, Let me just get here exactly when it was written. 1978. There you go. It's pretty fun, and especially if you watch the series, you should read this book because it's basically the reason why Frem Lebowitz got famous. Okay, so you should read it. There's a reason she got famous for this book. That's all I'm gonna say. So yeah, pop culture kind of shapes everything from books, news outlets, and several other things. Pop culture is just present all the time. You know, you're always talking about musicians, you're always talking about celebrities, movies, books, TV shows, novels, soap opera, and the list goes on. And I'll just give two big examples that are big for me. One of them, the first one, Friends, from as a TV show. In case you're living under a rock, Friends is a TV show. Um, what we called oh, I forgot the genre. It's just like Seinfeld. Um, Jesus Christ, I forgot. Sitcom. It's a sitcom. Sitcom, not sitcom, sitcom. Sorry. So Friends is a sitcom. I had to search that in my head. That went from 1994 to 2004. And many things came out of Friends episodes, from their dialogues, jargons, but also plots that we see in Western society, presence influence even today. From simple things like how Chandler's family is handled, or showing a gay marriage back in 1996, which was a revolutionary for its time. And the reason I say 1996 is the exact year where gay marriage was highlighted in Friends, which is when Ross' ex-wife Carol is married Susan, her current fiance, two women. So they get married, 1996. Just stop and think that we still have people today that are against gay marriage. So I don't know why. I don't know what reason could possibly be behind someone being against gay marriage nowadays, or ever. Ever, I'm not saying I agree, but I get it. But nowadays, dude, maybe reconsider your values because love is love. Who cares? Who gives a shit? If it's not a child that is getting married or an animal, doesn't matter, or it shouldn't matter. Anyway, in Chandler's family, I mention because Chandler's father is not only a homosexual adult male, but he's also a drag queen who performs in Vegas. And of course, because of when it was released, there's a lot of homosexual jokes that nowadays wouldn't fit the final cut, but I still think they kind of handle it in a way that shows a lot of tolerance, especially if you check the date of when it was released. So anyway, it was pretty revolutionary for its time. And in some other cases, however, there are weird coincidences. And this is a very, very, very weird one, right? It's not weird. Okay, it's not that weird, but okay. There is a movie. It's like a cult classic called Barbarella, and oh my God, this movie is great. Right? This movie is great. If you guys have never seen Barbarella before, you should. Okay? Just because it's a classic. First of all, it has Jane Fonda in it. And Jane Fonda is, in my honest opinion, the best actress that has ever lived. Mary Streep will have to excuse me, Meryl Streep, sorry. Um, but Jane Fonda is just perfection. She's too good. And Barbarella has her, that's reason enough for you to watch it. But there is a scene, it's a sci-fi movie, a sci-fi cult classic. Um, there's a scene in it that I think I had it written somewhere. I think 1 hour, 11 minutes, and 25 seconds, you can see two members of the revolution talking, and which was trying to take place in their world, saying a password out loud. And this password is the same that we had in a viral video, for like a 10-year-old viral video. Um, that a weatherman, weathercast, a weather spokesman or weathercast spokesman, whatever you want to call it. I call it weatherman. Makes an exemplary pronunciation of a Welsh village in the east coast of England, sorry, in the east coast of England, and I cannot pronounce that. I cannot. It has more consonants than vowels, that's how I can say. And it's a big ass word. Like it's pretty big. And there's no intention to make a point here, by the way, on comparing the password from, a 70s movie, a 60s movie, because it's 1968, to a viral video that happened 10 years ago, other than just saying, these things are present, but at the same time, they don't fit just the present. You know, we as humans haven't evolved as much as we would think. So a script for a movie that happened 53 years ago makes a joke that is still a hit, still a success, at least enough of a success to be a viral video today. And at least to me, this just goes to show our utmost tendencies, my opinion. Okay? And finally, back to Terrance Malick. And now I need to take another sip of my coffee because my brain is just too tired. I'm recording this on a Thursday night, which is fairly a pretty easy day for me. But I still given some classes. I've still talked to some people, and anyway, my voice is already getting tired. But anyway, back to Terrance Malick. And one of my favorite movies from him that I mentioned before, Badlands, again from 1973. And some of my opinions on this director are just directly related to some philosophy aspect, okay? But again, not an expert opinion, just my 2 cents. His take on how to depict and narrate his character was, in my very humble opinion, sublime and perfect in its own flaws. Okay? The form that the scenery takes with the character development, also the ever escalating situations with lots of unpredictability. Unpredictability. There's a word for you. Unpredictability. You can notice the film's presentation of ontological landscapes. Um, this philosophical view comes from years his professor years, his time as a professor, and also from studying Martin Heidegger's ideas. And of course, as a result, upon studying it for years, with the episode of even translating one of Martin's books, if you guys didn't know, Terrance Malick was a university professor and he translated The Essence of Reasons from 1969. And when I say, if you guys didn't know, why would you know this? I don't know, but maybe you do. In case you don't, I'm just telling you. For you to translate a philosophy book, trust me, you need to be very good and familiar with that topic. Uh, he chose the filmmaking career rather than the academic life. In all of his films, you can see the study of the being, ontology, yeah, his presentation of human nature, be that in the mentioned movie or or other works like The Thin Red Line from 1998, which again, a movie that I mentioned, and again, a recommendation to you guys. So this is Terramalis for you. He had a deep understanding of philosophy, plenty of chances to go to the academic career, to the academic life, but he didn't. And I'll talk about a director that actually did both, which, by the way, is one of my favorite directors, probably my favorite director of all time. Uh, Continue talking about Malik. Some of his other work had a lot of meaning in it as well. Always with anthology, always talking about the meaning of life, always talking about anthology. So if you take a look in essentially every single one of his films, like I mentioned before, if you've seen one, you've seen all of them, you can notice his tendency to mixture philosophy with his style on how to present you, the viewer, to the story. On the other hand, he also repeated several of his shots, wind, trees, or windy trees, and overall nature shots are present in almost every movie of his. With that, you can either love or hate his work, but the amount of thought put into it is certainly respectable, right? I mean, he's not just a guy who heard about ontology on TV or a random podcast and started using that in his creations. He actually understood what he was talking about. And please trust me, there is a huge difference in these two cases. Now, just as a comparison, we can take, for example, the French director and my favorite director, Eric Romer. If you never heard of Eric Romer, this is your cue. Go look him up. Pause this video, go look Eric Romer, especially a few of the movies that I'm going to talk about here. Now, as you can see, this is personal to me because, again, not only he's one of my favorite directors, he also interprets and illustrates several of Charles Baudelaire's ideas in his creations. Ah, isn't this amazing? Charles Baudelaire is my favorite author, poet of all time. And there comes this director that represents some of his ideas as well as Pascal and other philosophers, all right? By the way, if you like Pascal, you should watch um, a movie that Eric Romer did in mix of his six moral tales called My2Cents, which is My Night at Mod, and they have a discussion, or I should say, a few discussions regarding Pascal's theorem. The theory behind Pascal's theorem. Please check it out. Okay? Good. Um, yeah. Listen. Let me even get this here. So they talk about pensée. All right, pensée. Um, Please check it out. I cannot, I cannot recommend this enough. The book is named Thoughts. So his serum in this book called Thoughts or Pensée, I don't know if I'm pronouncing this correctly, hopefully I'm not butchering it, is talked about in the movie Manuiche Mod or My Night at Mods. This movie got a lot of prizes back in the day. It's from the 60s as well. So again, I will repeat, he also interprets and illustrates several Charles Baudelaire's ideas in his creations. When I say creations, I mean movies, alright? Here we have another example of the mixture between philosophy and filmmaking, but this time in a more indirect way than before. Indirect way than before. Given that Baudelaire was, if nothing else, an inspiration for Homer. Okay? And yeah, I don't think it's that indirect, but it is true. This is nothing but a simple observation, but you can notice in his filmography, throughout the characters' thoughts and the city's landscapes, almost as if you were hearing Baudelaire himself. You have shots of it mostly when he goes into the city streets and sidewalks, filming the motion of the crowd with his characters, mostly using a small crew of only 5 or 6 members, and giving us Baudelaire's ideas and vision. This paragraph doesn't make it justice, so if you like, which is true, so if you liked it, check L'amour après-midi, a movie still inside the six moral tales of Eric Romer called L'amour après-midi or Love in the Afternoon or Claire in the Afternoon because there's another movie called Love in the Afternoon, and it's not this one. You should see Claire in the Afternoon or L'amour après-midi from 1972 to see and also pay attention for whenever he goes to describe the emotion of the crowd. Keep in mind, Eric Romer took real shots of the crowd. Alright? He had a small crew for this sole purpose. He didn't want to pay just people, just walker bys, or whatever it's called. Just random people in the background. That's what you have there. Actual random people, not actors. That to me was insane the first time I heard it, and to find out it's actually true was even crazier. Uh, the same as with Terrance, Baudelaire is shown in several of Homer movies. If you know just a little bit about him, or even maybe you never watched any of his classics, here lies my recommendation. Again, my biggest recommendation yet. The whole reason I brought this up can be divided in two main explanations, and here we go. The first one is that we tend to find certain things interesting, no matter the culture or the time. You can take the movie Battle Royale from the year 2000, for example, which is taken with its dystopian world from Japan to Hollywood, being filmed and written under the same premise, just more romanticized in the Hunger Games trilogy, which was aired 8 years later in 2008 and finished its saga in 2012. Now, if you're still with me, you probably have the same conclusion as I do. The more you study about the world, the more references you get. This helps, if nothing else, you to understand things that are shown to you. Yeah? I mean, people often ask me, why do you read so much? Well, first of all, I'm slightly dyslexic, and I'm also a teacher, so I need to remember things. I cannot just afford to not remember them. So reading helps with that. And second of all, it's just comfortable to be able to follow up in any conversation of any topic. Of course, that doesn't work 100% of the time, but for most of it, it will help you. And I don't only mean classics, I don't only mean classical movies and books and music. I also think you need a mixture of culture and pop culture, because if you only keep your head in the past and you don't follow along what's popular among your friends and colleagues and coworkers, and in my case my students, I'll be left behind in conversations, you know? So knowing pop culture is quite important. Either you can live how Denis Diderot would want us to do, think for yourself, knowing how the cogs in society work, so you can be a hypocrite and live among them, which is my highest recommendation after Eric Romer, instead of not understanding it and trying to run away. And again, Denis Diderot goes directly against Jean-Jacques Rousseau idea that you should just isolate yourself and run away from society. No, live among society, be a hypocrite, know how everything works, know how stupid you are, and remain being stupid because you know it's the best way to live. Just the best way to live. Oh, I'm being manipulated by the big media and I'm buying all these cell phones and computers and cars I don't need. This sucks, but it's the best we have. All right. But I must say that having this conscience, the option lies with you. Either you want to act on it or not. Okay. It's like don't be like I used to be, reading a lot, thinking I'm the smartest person in the world, which is sad, really, because I'm far away from it. And it made me quite the arrogant prick. You know, I was quite arrogant for no reason. I have no reason to be arrogant. I'm not smarter than anyone. But I must admit that I got a little bit arrogant when I started studying like crazy. And I think this is kind of normal because, for example, right, if you study political science and you know exactly what's going on with politics, you know exactly what is happening with a certain political contradiction or just drama that nowadays unfortunately are quite common. And you know what a statement means, and then you are in a group of friends and you hear their theories, and you know that these theories are not here nor there, and you're like, all right, let me tell you something. Let me show you how wrong you are. Never be like that. You know, no one likes a know-it-all. Especially when you're talking to friends, if you have a spouse and you're talking to them, if you're talking to family members, just be open. Even if you know better, just be open, alright? Nothing bad will come from listening to other people. The very best, if you know what happens to be the truth, if you know what happens to be real, if you know the real information, you can at least filter it and keep having your relations with people around you instead of just trying to be a know-it-all. Because honestly, when I was like that, it was my most insecure phase. If you are secure of who you are and what you know, you should not you should not have to try to showcase to people how smart you are all the time. Sometimes I still do it, don't get me wrong, especially with my friends, because sometimes it kind of pisses me off how stupid they can be. I'm sorry to say that, but it's true. They can be pretty dumb. But I just offend them if I showcase that. And they won't think, oh, look how smart Dan is. No, they'll think I'm even more of an idiot. And you just end up fighting for no reason. There's just no reason, right? And I don't know. Listen, I have a funny story. Funny for me, hopefully funny for you guys as well. Just so we don't lose, alright, what we usually talk about. See, I'm following from the topics books, politics, relationships, and random. I still need to talk about relationships. And what best place on the internet than the subreddit relationship advice? I have a juicy one here. It was posted 2 hours ago. Let me sip, drink let me sip my coffee really quickly. Yeah, English is hard. Okay, so the title goes. The guy is 27-year-old, by the way, male, and his friend is a 26-year-old female. And here we go. My friend has an open kink that really bothers me. Am I allowed to say I don't want to hear about it anymore? So it's not a couple, it's a relationship between friends. So we just changing here things a little bit. The first episode of the second season should be different. We have a different cartoon. I'm trying to create scripts for you guys rather than just randomly random shit online and commenting on it. Should be more enjoyable, but who knows. So here we go. Um, my friend has casually told me in conversation about 4 years ago that she has a little kink. She then went on to explain that in a relationship she likes to act like a little kid, talking in a baby voice, acting childish, calling her partners mommy or daddy, and dressing like a child. I'm already uncomfortable. Oh God. Reading this out loud is weird, man. This is not a kink, this is weird. And to be honest, the men who like this shit, you should seek therapy. I'm not saying the girl shouldn't. Of course, you should seek therapy as well because this is not a normal kink. Children should not be arousing, all right? If you find if you find children or childlike things to be arousing, something is not right. Trust me, something is not right. Let's continue. In the beginning, I was off-put, but known that you are not really supposed to shame people for their kinks, and since I'm not involved with her uh, in any since I'm not involved with her in that way, I think, I figured I wouldn't hear any more about it. I was wrong. I was so wrong. Yeah, man, what do you expect? You open up to it. She probably tried to talk about this with other people, and they called her a weirdo, so she stopped, and now suddenly she found a guy that she can be open with about this. So yeah, you're fucked. You have to hear about this now. Um, Friend now has some instances where she reverts to this childlike character when we hang up. Oh, Doing things like acting like a child who can't open things or even stand up properly, asking for uppies, and even pretending to nuzzle my breast like a baby. Wait, I thought you were a male. Okay, maybe it's a woman. Alright, whatever. Let's say it's a woman. It's a woman talking about her male friend who acts like a baby and so on. Okay, nuzzle my breast like a baby. She even stopped a video chat between me and her sister to show me what she just bought. Binky with the word brat on it, which she started to suckle. Oh god. The thing here is, I am a survival of childhood sexual trauma. About 6 years of my life, I was sexually abused by a pedophile. Oh, and seeing this kink where my friend wants to act like a child upsets me. Yeah, no shit, man. It should upset you regardless, but if you have a direct trauma to this bullshit, yeah, that's fucked up. How you're enduring this is beyond me. I guess I should just keep reading to see where this will end, but anyway. I just can't wrap my head around wanting to act like that in a sexual setting or in a relationship. She has acted like this in public occasionally, but mainly she does it in their home where I come over. Am I allowed to ask? Wait, so what the fuck? But mainly she does it in their home. Okay, where I come over, am I allowed to ask that she refrain from doing that in front of me? I just don't know how to handle this or how selfish I am being for asking. Maybe I just wanted to rant. A couple of things I think people might need to know. I am closer to her sister than her. She knows all about my past history. Well, knowing that you got sexually abused doesn't automatically mean the person understands what it is to be sexually abused. So the fact that she knows about your past doesn't surprise me that she lacks the empathy to have the sensibility to not make fun of that. So it sucks, but again, understandable. You absolutely should tell her that makes you uncomfortable. I mean, what else is there to do? It's either that or just not talking to this person. So you should open up to her and just be upfront. Why not? Why the fuck not? Just be upfront, man, or woman, should I say? And yeah, that's it. You should not tell the sister first, which apparently is your closest friend. You should tell her directly, in my opinion, because then it's just better. You should always be honest, man, especially if it's just a friend. You know, it's not cool to lose a friend, but who gives a shit? Like, this is making you uncomfortable, so you're already in a bad situation. At least you can make it stop if you guys are not friends anymore. And as always, I'll read the first comment, which got some prizes here, so probably much more valuable than my 2 cents. Kings should be consensual. That includes with friends and in public. She does not have your consent. I'm so sorry that you've been dealt such a tough hand. You're not being selfish. She is. If you've got in you, sorry, if you've got it in you, tell her to stop because she doesn't have permission to involve you. And if you think she can handle it, mendel the, b- uh, mention the bit about doing this in public. If you don't have the capacity to deal, distancing cut off. Yeah, you should have the capacity to deal. This first comment is great, by the way. It talks about the empathy part that I think is important to mention. And yeah, the key thing here is that kinks should be consensual. Absolutely. Any behavior should be consensual, okay? Anything you say or do to your friends, family members, spouse, whatever the fuck, should be consensual. If you just do things without knowing that the other person is annoyed or bothered, um, you should open yourself up to the person. Because honestly, man, I mean, come on, come the fuck on. Just be honest, you know? Especially if you have a childhood trauma like this, what what choice do you have? You should just be upfront and honest, and yeah, it's just as simple as that. And if the person doesn't give enough of a fuck to stop their shitty behavior around you when you ask, just stop being friends, cut off the relations, and explain the situation to the sister. Sister should understand, and yeah, that's it. So I have a student sending me messages. I'll have a class soon. I'm sorry, guys, about that. So anyway, this is the first episode of the second season. Hopefully, you guys enjoyed this more than the last episodes, but maybe it's the same shit as it always was. Hopefully, the cartoon is in a better quality and it's more pleasing to see than the other drawings. So, yeah. I hope you guys have a good night or day or whatever you're having right now, and a good week. And I see you guys or I talk to you guys in the next episode. Take care.